Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in again. I know I might look a little different this week. I just thought I'd get rid of the beard.
You sort of remind me of a hairless cat. You know, those ones. Welcome, folks. I'm the Captain, Ross Memphis Pambrun, and with me, as always, my friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would also like to say thank you to our First Nation friends, to the Métis settlements, and to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. We would also like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. And now, folks, let's get the wheel squeaking. And as always, with a fabulous introduction by myself, here we are looking at each other again, Lawrence, still across the starry sky of working not in a podcast studio as a result of we're still fighting through our pandemic, and we will get back into a room together, Lawrence. And as we continue to do our virtual conversations, I welcome all the listeners to the Squeaky Wheel. With me, as always, my very good friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun, CEO of the Memphis Group, and as always, I welcome you to Conversation from a Métis Perspective, the Squeaky Wheel. Thank you to all of our subscribers. Thank you to everybody in the Calgary region, in the lower southern Alberta region, throughout our beautiful province of Alberta, and across Canada to all of our listeners. And hopefully, Lawrence, we're starting to reach a bit more of an international audience. Because when you type in the word Métis and conversation, well, we tend to pop up. And there's just not that many podcasts out there that come from a Métis sort of connection. So, Lawrence, introduce us to this week's Squeaky Wheel.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in again. I know I might look a little different this week. I just thought I'd get rid of the beard. But, you know, I kind of miss it. You know, I feel a little hairless around my face, but.
You sort of remind me of a hairless cat. You know, those ones, when you actually look up to them kind of close and it's like, I don't think I would want to hug that thing. Now, folks, I know your cat lovers out there. Please don't send too much of your hate email. But if you are going to comment, you want to comment about Lawrence's face or hairless cats, make sure you reach out to us, tsw@métis3.org. I'll make sure I steer towards Lawrence.
Well, those hairless cats are a pretty expensive breed, right? So.
Yeah, that's probably where that's the part that I was thinking about when I was looking at you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You take us back into what's happening here.
Well, I mean, you know, not too much going on in the region other than, you know, all the programs that we're doing. I don't want to list them all off, but we're wrapping up our fashion program. We actually are looking at ways to really project a real positive framework for our Constitution coming through. Seems like there's a lot of negativity attached to this whole Constitution process, but you know, overall, we really needed to get it to our members, our young people, our seniors, everyone, so they can, you know, get to the polls and start voting when it comes to the ratification process. So we know that's going to be happening in the fall. So I know that we're coming up with some social media ideas here in Southern Alberta to really highlight a real positive, you know, aspect of what the Constitution means in self-government.
I think it's important, and I think that's what you're trying to point out is everybody should have an opinion and everybody should be involved in this conversation, but don't just all of a sudden start putting up roadblocks because you haven't, you know, been paying attention. Get involved and understand that this process is going to move forward. And just because we're making a decision on moving forward regarding a constitution doesn't mean that things cannot be reassessed, reevaluated. We're just moving forward in a positive direction regarding self-government.
That's right. And, you know, the M&A is just the vehicle driving the ship, right? I mean, it's really up to the members at the end of the day to say yes or no, and then we move on, we carry forward. So if it's a no, if it's a yes, well then we have certain aspects that if it's a yes, then we have to go to the government and start working together on that agreement. But if it's a no, well, then we just go back to the drafting board again, right? And just redraft it.
Yeah, but at least the membership, the people are going to get a chance to see it and then vote on it. And folks, just like any vote, when you're old enough, which oddly, for some reason, certain places, especially down in the US, you can go to war, but you can't drink. Here, if you're old enough to vote, participate, make sure you go out there and, this is how you connect with your community, by listening in on this. And if the vote doesn't go your way, be positive towards the change.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Alberta, we struggle, and I see that the Conservatives, the federal Conservatives are, trying to reevaluate their approach with O'Toole and how they're going to work their way through it. But if we don't have people who are trying to make positive change and affect, changes at the Liberal end of our government, we're not going to see a lot of strength developing here in the West.
Yeah, that's right. And Lou Riel made those principles of action and trying to get the government going. And, if he heard, all this stuff that's happening right now, he'd probably turn in his grave a little bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that stuff that he fought for, a recognition and being at the table. Well, we're at the table right now. So, yeah. That's a very, very important part of our history as Métis people.
Yeah. That we've actually, and now it really only took
154 years now. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, but we are making progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much like, you look at some of the construction projects that have happened around our city and the duration of time it took for a relationship with Tsutsina in order to, create the allowance for a ring road to work through. It takes time, and people want to be involved in the conversation. And, we'd all think that, well, couldn't we just make this decision overnight? Well, obviously not.
Yeah,
These
absolutely.
things take time.
Yeah. So, I mean, we look forward to that. And then, we got the news that BC is moving into self-government framework also. So, we have 4 provinces now. And, looking to the future, what that means for the Métis Nation across Canada.
Well, and obviously how the impacts of BC and their relationship with their government, all of these things I know are going to start influencing each other because we're all going to be watching this. But, the more people and the more citizens that are moving this conversation forward, well, then the government cannot take notice. They'll have to react.
Yeah, that's right. And we're at a milestone right now where Canada's listening to us. Maybe not be the provinces across the homeland, but at least Canada is. And that's very, very important for us to certainly be at the table.
That's a good point. It almost seems like a lot of times we get better conversation federally because when you consider that, it seems like our province doesn't recognize that, well, were there really any Métis down in southern Alberta? Well, as a matter of fact, it seems like all of these local areas are finding all of the relics. That conversation is coming to light.
Yeah, I mean, it was always the CPR maps they refer to, and then, the stagecoaches, and then they skip a layer, they always skip by it, and we go, well, we were here, and and then it goes to deaf ears most of the time, right? So,
well, it's hard to say, I'm going to just go back to, before we move on to some of the conversations about spring and COVID, but without the beard, it's a big change. I was pretty much getting used to you with a beard. I was getting pretty comfortable with it. So when all of a sudden this change happens, just like the rest of the listeners, I'm shocked, Lawrence, but yet I'm going to be able to work through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my kids were just wondering who that was, when I walked in there.
And it even looks like you got the rag top cleaned up there a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So spring is slowly coming upon us. I know my wife had mentioned that it looks like there might be a little bit of snow here in our future, but a lot of my friends who have retired and slowly move away, they comment that they miss the 300 days of sun that we get here in Alberta. And folks, I love going east, but I sure love coming west. And when I go further west, I enjoy it until I realize just how much rain there is and how that there doesn't seem to be a reasonable space for roads to drive, cars to drive on the road. But when I'm here in Alberta, I got to admit, when that sun comes up, I am smiling, and that just warms my face.
Absolutely. Vitamin D changes you. You feel the change inside your own body when the seasons change also.
Yeah, we're across the street. I start to see the neighbors' lawns is starting to just touch a little bit green. Yeah, every time. This is one of my more favorite times of the year. Though I also really like it when Calgary gets around to finally cleaning the streets, but that's going to take some time.
This is true. And it's kind of the dust bowl right now, especially when those street cleaners go down the block.
Yeah. Motorcyclists, you all be careful out there as well. COVID. I wanted to bring up Lawrence. I know I'd mentioned to you just the other day, I did get my vaccine. Now, folks, the struggle I had was my wife works in healthcare, and I have lots of friends who work in healthcare. And as much as I was appreciated the opportunity, it was still a struggle for me, Lawrence. I know Regan has talked about it before on our show, Regan, the medical director for Métis Nation, that this is the process, and the Métis people of our age, my age, are being allowed. And I did have a conversation with somebody from AHS, and I said, well, it's just what I find surprising is my world as a first responder, they're not getting it. My family members who are high level and engage patients all the time haven't seemed to receive it. But I couldn't say no because this is part of the process. And as much fear as there is around AstraZeneca and that was going on, the numbers across the world are so low compared to how many people have been vaccinated. I will admit, day 2, I'm like, don't feel too bad, but just a little bit of a twinge. And then day 2.5, my shoulder was starting to get a bit sore, just right where the needle was. But honestly, that was it. That was sort of the end of it. Never thought about it again. The tenderness just from the vaccination sort of went down. But I have to big shout out to the nurses and the groups that are there to take care of all of these people who are going in to get vaccines.
Yeah, I mean, the health indicators, for Indigenous populations and the Métis are included in that. There's a high rates of diabetes and heart disease and all these underlying factors. And that's certainly one reason why they did it. Plus, a lot of the Indigenous people who live in rural areas too that don't have a quick access to hospitals. So that was, one of the reasons why they did the rollout for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. So I wouldn't. Yeah, and what does suck is that your spouses, the people at home who aren't Métis, that might have an option to get at their needle, and it's just not there right now currently.
And it almost seems like there's a bit of concern, like we're waiting on a little bit more vaccine so that I think we've opened up into phase 2A, that we're allowing anybody within phase 2A to come in or start making their applications. But I had a lot of people who had told me, well, it was 8 hours on the phone. I'm not going to lie. In the late afternoon, first time I called, it was about under a minute. The second time I called, it was about 2 minutes. And they were wonderful. They were, trying to accommodate, a schedule or what was within a reasonable distance of your home to try and get people in. So again, big thanks. This is a tough process. It's not like we've done it very often. You look at how often the fact that we draft new hockey players and there's a new hockey season, and yet we still haven't won a cup in a while. So this is all very new. And I'd like to think that, hopefully AHS is building on some of these because, when the websites are going down, it's not like we didn't know there was going to be a lot of people who were trying to book online. Now is the time in order to try and create that. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Everything's moving to the pharmacies now. So all the pharmacists have to get ready. And so, and then now regular doctors are going to be getting the needles. So some of your local clinics will be having it. So it's an interesting time for sure. But they want to get it to as many people as possible by June. That's the plan here in Alberta. Yeah.
And seemingly all the way across Canada, I think that we are looking at trying to, I think Trudeau was sort of saying by the end of June, the mass of the population in Canada should be you know, we should be achieving that goal. So I guess a lot of that's just going to depend on, has enough vaccines shown up, and hopefully the supply chain, that's a word we didn't used to use too often before, but it just seems like it's part of everyday vernacular now that supply chain has started to open up.
Yeah, right now we're about 10% of Albertans who have the vaccine already. So,
well, I want to talk a little bit of sports, Lawrence, before we chat with the Flames or the Oilers. And we're doing pretty good in this province. Before we jump into the Raptors and the struggles that they've had, the Olympics, Tokyo Olympics. Now, I actually don't know if we have any Métis or Indigenous athletes. That's actually something I'd like to look up, and maybe we'll have that conversation. But sadly, no international fans, it sounds like, will be attending.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, they want to keep the numbers low and the audiences over there, and sort of keep it. They're going to keep the audience, the crowd levels low anyways. So they just want to make sure that at least the citizens in Japan actually have a chance to see the Olympics too.
When this whole pandemic was first starting, they're like, we are not canceling the Olympics. Well, obviously that changed, and then things got pushed back, and a lot of these athletes spend their whole lives gearing up for this one opportunity, much less the struggle just to even make the team that's going to make the Olympics. Boy, I hope that we can do everything in our power to get our wonderful Canadian athletes that opportunity to go overseas and participate. I know it's going to be very different. I know the feeling, but hopefully they can, still create the energy that sparks these giants in all of these sports, to give them that opportunity, because boy, getting pushed back is just, it's got to be mentally exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, and plus you got to remember the ceremonies themselves, the opening and the closing, are such a huge event too, just in itself. And but yeah, like, I don't know, even if one athlete gets sick, well then he's out of the games pretty much. That's his chance.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I wonder how long they're gonna have, in the case of sort of the same thing with a bubble. Is it going to be, well, you got to be there 30 days in advance and you got to test negative 4 times a day, or, like anybody, look at the challenges that was happening when the tennis players were trying to fly over to Australia. It was a nightmare. The people were negative getting on the flight and were positive after the 18-hour flight by the time they arrived there. And now you're bringing in international athletes. It's gonna be tight. Yeah,
for sure. We'll see how it goes. I'm pretty optimistic that it'll be entertaining. It's just a matter of people who can pass the COVID protocols, right? Every day. Yeah.
There's going to be every day of it. Flames seemingly doing quite well under Sutter. I know that we talked about that. They did lose one, I think, the other day. Whereas the Oilers have turned around and they're on a bit of a tear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the
me
name
being
of the game,
the Oiler guy, you being the Flames guy. Let's agree to disagree, Lawrence.
Well, I'm not a Flames guy because I got Patrick Roy's jersey right
okay.
here. Yeah.
Good point. But yeah, you're right. You do have a lot of Habs memorabilia, which we should be making fun of you more often because of that. But this is the best we could do.
Well, I mean, he's the last Canadian goalie to win the Stanley Cup for a Canadian team, right? That was it.
Yeah. And the Raptors. Oh, I love basketball. Lisa always loved it. So at first, I didn't know the greatest deal about basketball many years ago, but just fell in love with the sport. It was fun to learn again. It was fun to experience the, getting angry at the game and not understanding things that were happening. But I absolutely love it. Well, here, right, they had lost 6 of their coaches. They had lost 5 of their players. A few of them had COVID. There was just a tremendous number of exposures. I think they've only won one of the last 8 or 9 games. I somehow missed a couple there, but really struggling. But again, such a unique year. Here we're thinking they were on just a tear. They were doing fantastic. And then all of a sudden you start losing all your players and you still look like you're almost good enough and you just lose. Heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching a video of the assistant coach breathing on everybody and they all think that he was the super spreader. And they were it was kind of funny. Like every person that he talked to got sick, right? And they'd show the highlight of him breathing on them.
Is that what they were? Because they kept sort of saying that there was a break in the protocol by the coaches, and I actually never saw that. Yeah, I read lots of comments about they were still following, they were doing everything in their power, they were really conscientious of it. But I didn't realize that was one of the videos, or that was the image that they were really chatting about. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big story was Siakam and him face to face, and he's coaching him, right?
Okay.
On the bench.
Yeah. And Spicy P, that guy is fun. And yeah, when you lose guys who score 20 to 30 points in a game, you're going to have a hard time trying to beat, these other teams that are capitalizing on that.
Yeah.
Now, a little back to the economy. I was just reading today that, and maybe this is some of the positives that come out of economic challenge. Here we've had all of these oil companies that have been struggling. We've had small businesses that are being forced to close. We were struggling. Our economy was getting beat up prior to COVID, but it sounds like there's a large film studio that's going to be moving into the province. So all of a sudden you open up space, you open up opportunities for employment. There's, we're doing quite well when it comes to a lot of the shows that are being shot here. Maybe this is one of the new directions and successes that we're going to be talking about more regularly here. An act that we're building a film industry here in Alberta.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had one, but the good thing about Calgary is that the international airport, plus the mountains are here, the prairies are here. You have all these different areas that they can utilize here in Alberta, and our dollar is comparative to them and our taxes, right? So that attracts a lot of film people.
That's actually a really good point. And every time I've traveled down to the south, seemingly quite often, but I love traveling across Canada just as much. When I'm down, I'll often ask people, why don't you ever go to Canada? First thing they're asking is sort of, can they go there? And they're not really too sure. It's not really built into their education system to have a good awareness of where Canada is and why. But see, well, you could buy a can of pop up there, or for them, I'll say you could buy a can of soda for $1 here. I said, well, you could buy the same can of soda in Alberta for 70 cents.
Right.
And you think about that, there's a 30% difference, 25, 30 cents for every dollar they spend. They're like, well, we should go up there. Yeah, everybody should come up here and experience the Calgary Stampede, and everybody should experience the mountains, and everybody should experience the wonderful joy that is the spring all the way to the late Christmas, fall, before the January, February, which is often hard. But everybody should be up here to experience that.
Yeah. And what we should say to these actors and these film companies, specifically in Hollywood, that stop listening to Leonardo DiCaprio. We do not, the Chinooks do not.
Yes, you're right. Remember, it was only a couple years ago when he was filming and a Chinook came through and somebody commented to him, that's climate change. And he got incensed and he was upside. This is exactly what it is. And he was commenting to the media and the newspapers, and the rest of us are like, well, actually, no, this happens quite a bit.
Chinooks have been around for a while. In fact, there's a mall called Chinook Mall here in Calgary. So, I mean, that should have been,
That's actually fabulous, Lawrence. I hope somebody told him that. That is awesome. You're right. There's a Chinook Mall. Though I was listening to one of the radio stations the other day, and they had commented, they said there was a place down in the US where the temperature had changed. And I think it was from, for example, if we were in Celsius, I think it was minus 18 to plus 22. And I thought, well, that's not really a big deal. Like this was such a huge swing. And then they pointed out it was within 7 minutes that swing happened. I'm like, oh, here you get that over the course of 8 hours, 10 hours. I guess they were talking, and I meant to look it up, but windows were shattering because the temperature changes were happening so incredibly fast in seconds that the infrastructure on these homes just couldn't tolerate the change. Like, well, yeah, I guess if it changes here over the course of 8 hours and we get our occasional headaches, well, I can't complain.
Well, I mean, we had the largest hailstorm last year. We had a flood here not that long ago. I mean, it is ripe for disaster, I think, anywhere you live, right? But at the end of the day, weather changes. There's
flooding in Australia. There's, seemingly a few more volcanoes that are starting to erupt. The focus of my satellite work was for environmental monitoring, but one of the things that I wasn't really utilizing in my phrasing a lot was when we looked at wildfires was the impact of climate change. I was looking at it more in conversation about, well, we monitor for wildfires. We're developing something that assists in mitigating and strategizing. But when you actually include the fact that in the course of, a week or two, when the Chinook winds come through, when the drying happens, that really changes the risk, the indices of wildfires. That's climate change. And again, I'm not jumping on this the same way Leonardo did when it came to, a Chinook coming through, but we are starting to see a lot more flooding around the world. We're seeing Venice, having trouble trying to stay above the water line. So we're really starting, we're seeing, the continental shelves starting to break off. So we're seeing that aspect. What's going to bring around the cold again? Not too sure, but we do need to monitor it.
Well, right now there's a large asteroid coming through the atmosphere, and it's missing us, thank God.
Yeah,
but
thank goodness.
Apparently it's 1.7 kilometers wide, so.
I would have to think it'd be a lot bigger than that. When you look around the world and you see some of those craters, they seem like they're a lot bigger than that, but I guess we're going to find out someday.
Yeah. But we just want film to come up here and tell the Métis story. Why not? I'll pitch them.
Bring it on up and tell the story. And now to close out a little bit, Lawrence, everybody I sure assume likes talking about the royal family. The big heavy hitters had come. We're a little bit late to the party, but I think it's still something that I don't want to suggest I find amusing. It's the most reality of reality TV. A lot of it's scripted, but here is a family that we've followed for such long generational history. And there have been people who have left their position in the royal family before for various reasons. But here, all of a sudden, we seem really focused.
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely hyper-focused. And I think a lot of it has to do with people wondering, why is the royal family still attached to Canada? And why do we, But, we have agreements with them, and the treaties are based on the Royal Proclamation. It would be tough for us to even to move away from that system, right? So, yeah, I get it. The Royal Ascent piece, what we contribute to the Queen every year. That question came up as a result of all this. And I watched the Oprah thing, and I was taken aback by it a little bit too. Prince Harry really wanted to get to the Queen and, have an appointment with her, and he traveled all the way up there and she canceled on him. Well, yeah, that was kind of a shortfall on her part. And then the discussion around how dark is your baby, question, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I get that you don't want to say those offensive things and who said it, and it was a whole thing, right? But I personally sometimes think that airing it in a public forum like that may not be the best option. For really anybody, any family.
Yeah. That one. There was a lot of unique questions that came out, and you're right. We're hypersensitive. We're hypersensitive to The Bachelor. We're hypersensitive to. I mean, it seems like more people know what's happening with the Kardashians than usually know what's happening within their own province. So I think that we have a long history with the the royals, with the British, with England. There's the conversation of colonial and the colonial ties, but it's part of identity. Even that relationship. When we go far enough back, and reevaluate, maybe it'll change. But you can't look and suggest that the time that we've spent as we work our way through, we should be looking at how many positives that we can find in there and strengthening those. Because a lot of times, if you want to be angry, folks, you can spend a lot of your time being angry, but be a part of moving forward.
Absolutely. It's, like that military where they teach you about objectives, right? You see your objective, you're being flanked on either side behind you, but you always focus on the objective being the safest place, right?
Yeah.
And, of us as Canadians, that's what we need to be focusing on. And we can't focus on all this negative stuff all the time. And that bodes well for a little bit with the royal family. If they really want to, do anything good in, throughout all the other countries and in the Commonwealth also, is that stick to that objective. And, but the thing is that they want to bring down the system a bit, because that system that they have currently at the royal family is the issue around the table, right? And how do they make that change? Well, they got to bring it out in the open, then they got to discuss it, and then the change will happen, right? And that's what they hope.
And maybe the Queen's been there too long. Maybe she should have, changed power and had new ideas, or worked on the relationships. But all we can do is keep moving forward, folks. Here on the Squeaky Wheel, we're always moving one step forward. We thank you, appreciate it. When you look us up online, you get to us on our YouTube channel, folks. Hit that little subscribe button. Fire your emails off to us. Find us at metis3.org. If you want to find out a little bit more about the stuff that's happening around our province, albertametis.com. And you can always reach out to Lawrence and I. We'll always take time for coffee. Thank you for all of our conversation. Lawrence, close us out.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. Hit subscribe. We're really excited about the future and where this is all headed. And us as Métis Nation, we're always here for you. And that'll never end. Just like our flag. It's an infinity symbol for a reason.
Just keeps going around.
Yeah.
So from President Lawrence, from Ross, the captain, from Jason, who does our background editing and makes sure that we both look good and answers all of our support and questions. Thank you from all of us here on the Squeaky Wheel, and keep on squeaking, folks.